In a previous video, we left off on our finished simple mosaic billet. If you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link at the end of this one and a link in the description. Now it's time to make the knife. So let's get to it. So this is a customer requested blade, so Nesmuk style skinner. You don't want to forge in the bevels and forge it to shape. It'll distort this pattern even more. So you kind of see the outline I've drawn there. I'm going to grind these out and get it ready to surface grind. So let's get started cutting this thing out. I could have forged this tang out, but I was really afraid of distorting the back end too much, so I didn't do it. I do forge them out when I'm doing a feather billet. It's a shame to waste the material, but that's what it is. I really love using my belt converted surface grinder. If you hadn't seen it, I put a video up a while back on how I converted it. But it's a very old surface grinder. It was abandoned in somebody's old shop or barn. And they asked me to I want it, and I took it and did some restoration work on it, got it running, new belt, which was a nightmare to change, but we got it. And I'm really happy with the results and what it does. My good friend Master Smith Steve Schwarzer took the chuck and reground it for me, and then I mounted it on the machine and got everything square, got my wheel square with the chuck, and it works wonderful. I like to set my work rest 90 degrees with my platen, that way I get everything square. I'm about to do some work on the ricasso. I want to have that close to final dimensions and square when I get through grinding and profiling it. Just a little sanding and cleanup. All right, let's take a look at where we're at here. After surface grinding the blade, I went ahead and finished the flats up to 400 grit. And I do that because I'm going to heat treat this knife before I grind it. So I like to have the flats as close to finish before I heat treat. So after I heat treat, it won't be so difficult to sand the flats, and I don't roll any of my edges. So right now what I want to do is cut the guard shoulders. As before I've said, I like to do this on my mill with a 1/8 end mill, but you can do this with a file guide. So I'm going to show you how to do it this way. So I got it clamped on there where I want to cut my guard shoulders to. I'm going to take it over the grinder, cut the guard shoulders. I'm going to cut a little relief in here with a file. Then we're going to get ready to do our thermal cycling and heat treating. So let's get them cut. This is a J-Flex belt, and I like to let it overlap to where it kind of puts a radius in that ricasso. So I'll push it against it, make the belt go around the platen, and form a little radius down in there to clean it up. Then I'll take it over and I'll file a little shelf on the back side to where, which is slightly smaller than the width of the tang at that point, because I'll be doing a hot fit, and with that smaller shelf makes a really nice tight fit. So I'm ready to normalize and thermal cycle this blade. Now I'm going to start out with 1575 and hold for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to move down to 1450 and hold 10 minutes. Then I'll set it for 1510, hold it for 10 minutes, and do our quench and harden our blade. In between each of these cycles, I just pull it out, let it cool to black, put it back in, go the next step. That's all I'm doing here is letting it air cool. All right, we got our blade heat treated. I went ahead and tempered the blade, and I finished sanded my flats up to near about my final finish. The only other sanding that I'll do on the flats is when I put my logo on, get it ready to etch. Now I'm going to go ahead and grind the bevels, and then we'll work on guard fitting. So since I've done my heat treating and I'm going to grind the bevels now, I have to make sure I run my grinder at a slow speed. I run at a slow speed, barehanded, where I can feel the heat and grind them down. I'm going to grind this edge down to about 20 thousandths. And if you run too fast, get it too hot, you will ruin your temper. I like to have a thin edge. It's a skinning knife, about 20 thousandths. By the time I'm done, there'll be a very small secondary bevel there for the edge, and she'll be ready to go. So right now I'm going to lay out my center marks and go grind the bevels. I like to grind about a 45-degree bevel down to my center mark lines. This does a couple things. It establishes the blade center and my plunge line. Then I start my main bevels. Also use a worn belt to do this. That way when I put on a fresh belt to cut the main bevels, I'm not shearing off good grit. I'm just cutting the bevels without catching the corner or the edge of that tang. Okay, got the grinding finished on the blade, and I'm ready to start hand sanding. But I wanted to go over something real quick with you. Might help you out along your journey on how I do my hand sanding. I start with cleaning up these plunge lines. And I just made a little tool, and I've actually made several over the years. But this one here is made to fit a hollow grind. It's got a slight contour, and I can get down here in these plunge lines. The way this works is I take a strip of paper and comes like this. Of course, this was a short piece because I've been using it. And you come in here and work these plunge lines like this. There's all kind of tools out there. There's air tools with flat disc on them, but you can't do that in a hollow grind. You will damage your grind and mess up and wash out these lines. Now, once I get the plunge lines clean, get all the scratches out of here, then I have another tool. What it is also made to fit a 6-inch hollow. And a piece of paper gets glued on here with some sticky spray. I use 3M Super 77, and I spray just a little bit here, stick it on, and I'm able to come in here and work this hollow. I'll get it cleaned up, make sure my flats are cleaned up to the final finish, and bring this up to the final finish using these tools. So I'm gonna get it hand sanded, get the guard made, and I'll be back. We'll start working on the handle. If you want to see a little more detail on how I make these guards, I'll leave a video in the description. One of the past videos I've done shows a little more detail. Now I'm just using the file with the file guide to get it right to dimension. So I'm just heating the guard up to around 1,000 degrees. And what this will allow me to do is hammer it on there because it's about 1,000, 2,000 undersized. The shoulders of that tang will leave an impression in the guard. If it's too hot, you'll roll in those edges. And if it's not hot enough, you won't get a good impression. Now I'm just going to go ahead and lay out the handle material, get my center, and line up my tang. Just laying out some reference lines. When I start contouring this handle and shaping it, I have something to go to. I know where the center of the handle is and how much I need to go in, etc. Well, we got her done. Pattern didn't turn out quite like I wanted it, but it's still pretty cool. That curly maple really pops on this handle. Love it. It's a wrought iron guard, museum fit, domed pin. Anyway, I hope you got something out of this. If you got any questions, leave them down in the comments. I want to thank my patrons, and I want to thank you for watching. I appreciate your support. Thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing, and commenting. We'll see you on the next one.